Warning. The following may contain concepts, ideas, and/or reflections unique in nature and not yet approved by government and/or corporate entities. This content is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended to stimulate further reflection or to perpetuate additional discourse beyond the scope already outlined by institutional curriculum.
Oh boy! All right, Monday. Oh boy, you're really sitting on the edge of this couch. You're
I'm on
ready
the edge
to
of my
go.
seat, man.
All right.
I wish my mouth moves as good as my ass does on the edge of the seat.
I'm glad you added that edge of the seat to that.
Yeah.
All right. All jokes aside, this one is going to be titled "A Race to the Bottom." Let's cue the intro. So we've given people a little bit of time to digest the title,
Yeah.
and let's see if they can guess the rocky road which our little cart of ideas is going to be bouncing around on today.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right, I mean, how do we want to unpackage this? Because this one's kind of a big one, but
It's a daunting task.
no, but I mean, so are we going to?
Let's get right
Are we
into
going to
it.
talk about Are we talking about like multiculturalism? Are we talking about because I believe that it's the mixing of cultures that don't necessarily naturally mix.
Right. I think it's
Right?
It's more. It goes a little bit more than that because it's just not purely racial. But I think that is definitely a very important part of this. But I think you could see the other dynamics where you take, as I was thinking of different examples, I was thinking of, you got a couple of Forrest Gumps and you put them in special military operations. And what would that do to the unit where you had a couple or three Forrest Gumps? And it would basically destroy the effectiveness and the efficiency of the military unit.
Okay, but I would say though, the only problem with using the Forrest Gump analogy is that people that are going to be familiar with Forrest Gump and the movie are going to be familiar that he got like a Purple Heart or something.
Yeah, well, that's movie.
Yeah, well, then just call him a retard or something. Let's not beat around.
A very slow person.
No, but let's not beat around the bush, because, I mean, if we beat around the bush too much, then the truth is going to be obfuscated in a bunch of word salad that doesn't really cut to the chase, which is, I believe, let me just say something and then you can riff off of it.
Yeah.
You can look on in horror. I think, okay, so one of the first things that I kind of had in my mind when we were talking about this morning is that, you know, as people that are really pro-individualism, right, does it make sense to believe in a homogenistic society as an individualist? Because an individualist would say you are judging people upon an individual's merit, not amongst the group that they associate with, not amongst where they are located, who they're associated with, what their financial status is, but like on a person-to-person basis. And so knowing that that's like fundamental in our perspective and what we believe, then I was thinking, well, is there something, and let me just finish.
Sure.
But like, is there something that is incongruent with the idea of an individualistically minded person also not really believing in large scale race mixing as far as like in a nation state? And the answer to that is, oddly enough, I think that it functions better in a homogenistic society to have individualism, because what ends up happening is regardless of what people want to happen in society, regardless of what their idea could be for a society, let's look at like the actual history and what people have done up to this point is we don't function that well as ignoring people and their physical traits. We notice when someone's fat. Even if societally we are taught not to make mention of it, we all know when someone's fat. We all know when they're of a different ethnicity, if it's definitely an obvious one, which means that we end up not really using our assessment of characteristics as judiciously as we should. Because when you have a multi-ethnic melting pot of a nation, you end up getting all these little asterisks beside people. It's not just Brian. It's Brian, white American in, lower middle class or whatever it happens to be. There's an asterisk beside your name that is associating you with another group. And this is just the way that people work. Just like prison, there could be plenty of people that don't want to necessarily be segregating themselves off into little cloisters or groups. But when you get in there, the facts of the internal prison structure is that race is an important factor. And you are forced to make that choice. And if you don't, you probably suffer greatly for it.
Yeah, I remember there was this very leftist, liberal-leaning Vancouver radio station that kind of was talking about this study that was done in prisons, and that this is just a fact of life, that when it comes down to survival, it's going to be, you are going to be drawn to whatever is as close to being what you identify as far as a race. I don't think there's going to be too many M&Ms in prison that go, I'm a wigger, but I really feel like I grew up with a lot of blacks that got a lot of that kind of influence. But I don't think he's going to survive very long in prison.
Hey, maybe, but that's
He
his
could be
his
a bunch
cross.
of black
But
bitches.
that's his cross to bear.
Right.
One of the things I was kind of thinking about what you were talking about that is an example of incongruity. For one thing, when you have multiculturalism, somebody is making a compromise, and a lot of people don't realize this. A lot of closeted racist white liberals don't realize how truly racist their ideas are, because they have this sentiment, I don't care whether you're, Hispanic, black, Asian, whatever, as long as you love money, I will accept you all. But yeah, so you're squeezing people, you're squeezing the tube of humanity through a square of capitalism, and basically saying, as long as you're whatever color skin you have, you squeeze through that ideology of capitalism, I'll accept you. But it's a form of almost human gentrification, right? Let's slap a facade on this person and then impregnate them into our society with a love of money and ambition in their heart, right? But that's not the full, well-developed, full spectrum of a human being, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, let's just look at America as a prime example. Forget about the other races. Let's just think about black Africans living amongst white Europeans. I mean, how has this experiment worked? And do white people have the right to say, we don't want to be we don't want this appendage attached to us, and we don't want this responsibility and all this potential violent crime that goes on. And you could do your own research on the statistics, but I think in North America, especially up in Canada, we've given these native groups this right to self-determination, which means they got this little plot of land, and sometimes it's not so little, and they got this territory or reserve, and they can have their own certain level of governance, their own police in some situations. Now, if the UN has given their blessing to these native groups throughout the Americas, I might add, not just in Canada. Why is it that white people cannot say as a distinct race of people, we do not want this appendage any longer? Forget about whether we want the appendage of Hispanics or Orientals. We do not want to live, to be schooled, to be sharing the buses. So basically, I think in a sense, I'm saying, is there a point where you could say, we want our own autonomy and we want our own area that we can live? And you, blacks, you could live in your own little world with your multimillionaire blacks, your great basketball stars. They could be up there on the high hill with their multi-level gated community, and you guys live in that area. There must be some kind of solution to this, but because, and I say this isn't just a racial thing, but these social engineers have been foisting this upon people, whether it's having some really low IQ students thrown into average IQ students and slowing the whole classroom down. Whether it's, you could use any example you want, but you could never get a professional football team to throw in a couple of fucking rookies who've never played football and not expect that that's going to have an adverse effect upon the team.
All right.
This is just food for thought.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in brick form. No. Okay. I mean, there's a lot for me to unpackage and beautify here. No, but okay. Obviously, there's certain things that okay, on its face, there's what you're talking about. I understand. Okay, one of the things maybe first is that as people get older, they do tend to kind of like the prodigal son. They come back home. So the wayward person when they're young and they're like, I don't give a shit about my family and I don't give a shit about my culture and I don't give a shit about my race. As they get older, these things start pulling them back.
I'm not that old.
Oh, no? Okay, well, whatever. So with delusional old people, what can happen is
delusion is one of the side effects of old age too.
No, but so you get it's almost like you could say a form of nostalgia, right? And I think there's a happy medium in all of these things. Now I just like to say one of the problems is with when we're looking at a global interracial sort of spectrum is there is no control. So if you look at it from a scientific standpoint, we don't have a control. We did in the past. We had people that were like uncontacted tribes and uncontacted individuals living on islands and stuff like this, like 300, 400 years ago. But as it currently exists, we do not have that.
Well, I don't know what you mean by control. So why don't you explain what you mean?
Okay, but what I mean by control is I mean a untampered with culture or society that we could say, okay, this is one that is like is in the global Western infrastructure or the Sino-Russian infrastructure of global dominance, and I mean, and outside of those big hegemonies, right? But like as it currently exists, we don't have that. So the problem is that some of the I agree with in part with what you're saying.
Well,
but
let's just say if you were to ask black people in America, would you like to continue living amongst white people that you don't really like? First of all, you can ask them, how do you feel about white people? Well, I'm fine with them. Well, how would you feel about having your own place where you can thrive, so-called. And you'd be, I would wonder, why would black people want to be close to white people? If they really find them, they want to like steal from them, they want to maybe punch their lights out, they want to maybe rip them off somehow, or they want to exploit them some other way. It would be like tantamount to, why would a criminal want to be around honest, decent people? Well, because he could rip them off, right?
Yeah. No, I mean...
And you see that too, where they let a bunch of criminals or even insane people out on the public as some kind of sadistic experiment to see what's going to happen. Like, it's kind of like Demolition Man, where you got what the hell is his name? The black guy that gets
Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes, who gets reinvigorated out of his cryogenic state.
Sylvester Stallone, no.
And you got Stallone, but you know, these people are completely they've been brought back out of a cryogenic state.
Right, but okay, I'm gonna push back just a little bit, because I feel like that'd be the fair thing to do here, and just say, okay,
sounds very Canadian to me.
Whatever,
anyways,
fuck
go.
off. So
well, that's not.
That's right.
more American.
Yeah, and so no, but okay. So what I'm gonna do is push back in the sense of saying, the elephant in the room is that certain races are clearly different. And so it's very easy for, like, you know, you get some Irish people and some maybe Ugandans. It's not going to take much to pick them out in a police lineup and separate each one of them, right? The redhead, white skin gleaming like it's the face of a full moon. That's your Irish guy, and you know, like,
okay,
I mean,
so
it's pretty clear,
okay,
right?
So physically, yes, you
So
say you could pick them out.
For myself personally, I don't know if everything is just entirely, because from my standpoint, I believe that there's a 50-50 split with environmental influence and genetic influence. I do not think that 100% of genetics is everything, right? But I do think that if we say that it's nothing, that's kind of crazy, right? Like, it has who your parents are and what's innately inside of you is kind of like, it is unavoidable in a sense. And I think the healthiest thing is to accurately assess who you are, who your parents are, what your genetics are. And that's the easiest way to actually be able to get the most out of what you want to be. If you want to change, you have to at least understand who you are as a core principle. I know this is a little bit long, but bear with me. So when we're talking about, like, on a macro scale, and we're talking about an entire race of people, there is an element of, and this is where it comes down to collectivism, because if you can get people into collective mindsets, and definitely blacks, this is definitely one of the biggest crosses that they have to bear, is they're very manipulatable when it comes to race issues. Like, they're very tribalistic as far as,
so you can corral them into doing, basically, you could steer them into different scenarios.
And an example of that is if you have an African American young person that gets shot seemingly from excessive force by a white cop, there is a rally cry around them in a way that white people certainly are not, at least today, right? At least today, that's not the way white people are. Maybe another time period in the early 1800s it would be a little bit different, but as it currently exists. But I do think that there's social engineering involved, and I do think that one of the important things is to realize that there are two forms of racism. There is the evil form of racism, and there is the natural form of racism that cannot be trained out of someone. Everybody has it, whether you're some like super like open, loving person what you think is loving is you saying, even though this person's different than me, I accept them. And so all of these things are categorizing people. There is no colorblind people out there. That doesn't exist unless you mean that you're like retarded and you don't think at all and you have no like critical thinking whatsoever.
I think
Go
you've,
ahead.
Talked quite a bit. When people divorce, and divorce is fairly common. I think probably 60%, 70% divorce rate probably in the West. And many times they cite irreconcilable differences. Now, if there is not a case for an irreconcilable difference between white America and black America, I don't know what the fuck is. If people are living in la la land if they think, no, everything's hunky-dory over here. So I think eventually there is going to need to be a split.
Okay. I have a question for you. Let's just say you had the split. What happens to America? Because here's my follow-up question. Is it just the blacks that are separated from America?
Well, you would have to start with, what group really is more antagonistic and creates more crime?
No, I'm asking you a specific. I know black on white crime. I know all those statistics. What I'm asking you is what happens after.
Well, you take one step at a time.
Yeah, but what?
You
No,
can't
but
see.
I'm asking
Well,
the obvious fucking question. Are you talking about segregating the Jews and casting them out of the states as well?
Well, that would be an important second step.
Well, no, that's pretty fucking major because it's kind of like what you're doing is you're talking about like. See, this is
when
what
you talk about
but just a sec, though.
you're not saying,
shut up and let me just say something for a second. Okay, when you're talking about blacks being a problem in the States, right? The fact that the Jews aren't a problem is kind of ridiculous now. Right? And so it's like, so what are you doing? Like it's
okay, so you want to
because
deal
the
with,
problem is that it's it's kind of like taking an easier target rather than taking the ones that have a team full of fucking lawyers and control all the fucking
so let's just say,
private banking
so if you want to
systems
get down
and are completely
okay,
engrossed
dude,
in the top
I got
echelon.
it. So there's a top fucking dog creating all the goddamn problems in this fucking world. So you want to like, okay, we'll stop. We'll stop everything here, and we'll start talking about the people who are actually creating.
No,
the problem.
but so I mean, why do we think that blacks are in the States in the first fucking place if it wasn't like corporatist exploitation that was? I mean, definitely there was Arabs involved, there was Jews involved, there was the Dutch involved, there was the English involved. Yes, there's groups that were involved in this, but they were fucking also elitist fucking pricks. So. I mean, we're talking about this isn't something that like happened out of like the ether. But to have a Trojan horse inside of Troy, someone has to fucking open the gates.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you have to find the root problem because otherwise then it feels like a black sheep thing where it's like we're using a group and going, if we got rid of these people everything would fucking be fixed.
No,
but it's not looking at the root problem. The reason why blacks the thing is I believe that there's a lot that's a psychological thing. There's a lot of people that are like you could be taking.
I didn't know you got so triggered. But.
Well, what the fuck? I mean, you've been like ranting. I mean, what do you want me to do? Sit here and just like, not say anything? I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Like, yeah, you're right. Get rid of the blacks out of America. Like,
no, I'm saying that I think people need to talk about solutions to problems.
Well, what am I doing? I thought that's basically what I'm fucking talking about solutions. If you expect like a complete agreement, well, then that's not really creating a solution. That's being just like, I'm going to fire up a rocket.
If you want to talk about the social engineers, they're probably doing this and foisting this upon the different peoples in the West.
Right, which is like divide and conquer, So it's like, it's kind of like saying like, well, opium is not it just didn't happen to be in someone's pipe out of nothing. Someone directly wanted to get opium inside of China as a destabilizing thing, and that's why you had the opium wars with China and England.
Yeah, it's all
it was like a
part of
purposeful,
history.
but it was a purposeful like reason. There's an actual. It was a Trojan horse. It was a destabilizing thing, whatever you want to say, but it was particularly meant, it was a powder keg that was lit to go off, right?
Right.
And so what I'm saying is like, I feel like focusing on the one group is because.
Well, when I started my thing, I said that if native Indians are allowed to have self-determination, then white people ought to have the right to self-determination as well, which would preclude anybody else that isn't in that category.
Yes, sure. I get, okay, here's my thing, right? It's kind of like with the Gaza war, right? Is like, so the Jews kind of can use this thing where they just kind of like, they just taunt, they squeeze, and then go, holy shit, why did you just attack me? What was that for? Now we got an excuse for like rolling in there with tanks and everything. So it's kind of, the problem is when you have a propagandistic arm, a monopolized propagandistic arm that exists, I just feel like there's so many aspects that are at work here. And you could take anybody. I mean, I told you this before. I was like, if you want to make Americans look bad, right? You could just take fucking the most violent fucking American criminals in the American prison systems, and you just exclusively ship them up to Canada, and Canadians are going to start going like, whoa, Americans are fucking like nuts assholes, right? Like, this is how, when we're dealing with like millions and hundreds of millions of people, it is easy to social engineer. And remember too that like these statistics, while they could be slanted in one direction or another, they are still not necessarily the norm. But if you want to create a riot-like environment, you can easily do it because you have enough cannon fodder. You open up your fucking insane asylums, let these people run wild, and you can like paint whatever political picture you want.
Well, I think they've done that too to create chaos.
Because, okay, here's another example, okay? Because let's talk about like actual immigration, right? Because when you're talking about like the African Americans, they've been there in the States for a while. They're not really represented.
Well, they also got fresh Africans too, but they also got Caribbeans, man.
So here's the point, though. Let's concentrate on the immigration aspect, right? The government is the one selecting people, right? Now, so an individual might go, well, this is the attributes that I believe are the best in people, right?
Right.
But the government doesn't need to import that. For example, that one fucking Chinese man who hacked off a guy's fucking head in Manitoba, right? He was there because the Canadian government thought that the Chinese government would be too harsh with this motherfucker, right? So, I mean, who's to blame? Is it just Chinese people in general? Or is it a fucking orchestrated fucking collapse of, like, Western civilization because of corruption and bullshit inside of it that is, like, actually wanting to create and put on a pedestal the worst, most degenerate pieces of shit on the planet and have them, like, all flooding into their country, making it into a fucking cesspool?
Yeah, I think this is what you're seeing. You're not seeing the most sophisticated components of Asia and Africa and anywhere else
we're
coming
seeing,
into Europe.
Well, what you're seeing is
the worst possible
Dude,
whole-
do you really think that some like fucking like Turk or some Iranian is the best that Iran has to offer? Who's like fucking little kids in a swimming pool? That's the best that they have to offer? They could be importing like a fucking nuclear physicist or a fucking artist or some shit. Instead, they're fucking importing a pedophile. I mean,
Okay,
what the
dude.
fuck?
I think
right?
you need to tone down that.
Well, you know, I mean, what are we gonna do? We're gonna skirt around a
No,
fucking
but
issue
see,
like this?
No, I know.
So
but you
it's-
have to say it in certain.
No, I mean, dude, people are gonna be just fucking incensed by what you're saying. It's not
It's
gonna.
not that though. It's
Oh, it's the pedophile.
No,
pedophile,
it's not.
pedophile.
It's-
I don't give a fuck about that
But then
shit.
don't expect to get shadow banned.
Yeah,
on
well, I
YouTube.
don't give a flying fuck about them shadow
Then what are
banning.
we even doing here?
Well,
We need to like maybe polish up our delivery system here if we're going to get any type of traction or viewership.
yeah, I mean, sure.
I
I think that we should all suck the fucking IMF's dick, and boy, could we get some views now? I love those
Dude.
guys, those fucking wrinkly old sacks over at the WEF. Man, I think they're fucking great. There, now we'll get some views.
Yeah. Well, this was a tough one because it opened so many different cans of worms.
Well, it might be it might be a really good analogous, and I think we'll just end it here because it's
Right.
probably not going to get much better than this. And and we'll end it with this concept. You see how touchy it is. I'm not talking to a African American. You can just imagine how fucking.
I don't identify as
You
one.
could just imagine how heated something like this could be. But even here, it's something that is innately like a powder keg, just ready
Right.
to go off.
Yeah.
And so nobody can really talk about it in rational terms. Everybody just gets emotionally fired up and frantic. And if you don't think that that's true, give an example. I want to see where a racially charged video is online where two people are discussing from the opposite ends of the spectrum, and it's being done like in a very logical, methodical, like Spock communicating to his brother about critical race theory or something.
Right.
Well, Captain, it's completely illogical to have blacks in America.
No, but I mean, if you really go back into history, I mean, the showdown that in JFK's time when he sent the National Guard down to face off with the Alabama State Troopers, because Alabamians did not want to be mixed in a school with Negroes. That was just the way it was in that time period.
Yeah.
Now, people could say, oh, well, the federal government was right in overriding something that was really the jurisdiction of states. Personally, I believe Kennedy overstepped his authority in that regard,
But
as well-meaning and intentioned as he was.
Yeah, but I also think that there's a lot of things that they're not trying to put a solve on the problem. They're trying to put like some salt in the wound and everything. Anything that they can do to aggravate the situation.
Well, where you get this promo. Sorry, dude. Aggravate the situation.
Don't touch me. No, but remember how there is, some blacks end up getting kind of anti-Semitic and we never hear from them again. No.
Like Kanye?
Well, or like Michael Jackson, or
Right.
I think I don't want to name anybody that hasn't, just to
Just in
defame
case.
them. But anyways, the point is that these people will have this moment of clarity, you could say, and they basically find out how
had an epiphany.
where their value actually lies
Right.
in American society, and it's not as a protected group,
Right.
really. And this is
It's
where
an exploited group.
and this is where also the idea of promoting gangbanging, like rap culture and stuff like this, where some of the cleaner rappers and music that was like more wholesome and or at least in a sort of positive outlook, right, was kind of stonewalled by the music industry, and everything was tits, ass, and drugs that was basically put on the forefront. And that seems a bit social engineering to me.
And the certain executives at these recording studios, which were of a primarily certain tribe,
right,
wanted to encourage that departure from, a certain
and so that's where I'm
change
talking about is like what the problem with races is not the people within the race, but just that they're used as a catalyst for for destabilization.
Well, that's why they call it a powder keg situation.
Right.
Is they're ready, they can light the fuse anytime.
It's just like okay, let's use this example to kind of clean things up a bit so that people aren't pulling their hair out.
So we look more humanitarian than we actually really are.
Look at when the Irish were coming over, right? The problem was not the Irish, but they were definitely used as a destabilizing unit by the establishment at that time, and especially by
lower the wages
by paying Irish like half the amount of natural-born Americans.
Right.
Definitely a destabilizing
Which would have been more
unit.
of English stock at that
Right,
time.
and so it's not you can use any group of people, even fellow white people that are really only a stone's throw across a small little ocean away from each other, and still look at it where you can utilize the separation of people. And at that time when the Irish were being brought over, I think it was like 95% of Irish people spoke Gaelic. So it was like definitely a foreign language, not really communicative. Right. So it was easy to segregate these people out from the regular mass of English-speaking people. But the point being is that these things are fucking tools for devaluing the individuals in a nation. Right. The people that you don't get proper democracy or representation in a melting pot, right? Because you can always just siphon out the problematic sediment in that pot and just put some new broth in, put some fresh broth that agrees with you. And this is a big problem with Canada, which has a huge amount of immigration, is you can, as a government, you can just import the people that are going to go along with your system. Right? You got 8.5 billion people out there.
You got compliant people out there outside of the West that want to sit down and comply?
Well, maybe not in the way that they want you to. It's just it's a great divide and conquer technique. And if it's not divide and conquer, like mass immigration has always been about exploitation. There's never a moment with mass immigration or a huge block of people going from one area to another where there's not exploitation. Either the migrating peoples are being oppressed, or the migrating peoples are taking over a place and buying up all the real estate.
And I'll add that there is no study, and I challenge anybody to come up with a study where it shows that Pakistani was better off because they sent a couple of million people into England and elsewhere.
Yeah,
or India was.
Oh, thank God.
India's better off now. No,
thank God we don't have any more engineers or doctors in our country, because you took them very graciously, by the way. We really appreciate that now we have no fucking doctors in New Delhi.
Oh, they could pump millions out because
really appreciate that.
It's just the way it is.
So here's what I want to say. The reason why I got fired up is because I don't want it to sound like we're shitting on one group of people, because I do think that there's a character assassination that's happening with groups of people. I'm not saying that they're perfect, and I'm not saying that that there's not huge problematic components within a certain group of people.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that these things would not be a problem with proper leadership, with a proper government that was looking to support the people for the people.
Yeah, sure, but you could say that about, if the greatest of agricultural practices were practiced, then there's no reason why there would be not one fucking hungry person if we had 10 billion people on the planet. But that's not what we're seeing at the managerial level.
Yeah, but I don't want to get into population control or anything like that, but I do think that
I think we better wrap this up.
These things happen.
Blow everybody a kiss.
And I just want to say,
Just a curse. Have a nice day.
What I wish for is world peace.
I'd like to say a prayer. Get some
but I do
kick-ass wine and toast to world peace.
Okay, but I believe in. I don't believe in these sort of tendrils of world banks or globalized corporations inserting their tendrils all around the planet. And so in an ideal world, I believe that people would have their space where they can operate. But I do think that it's hard to say, go back to Africa when, like 70% of Tanzania is a fucking natural preserve and it costs $70 a fucking day just to enter the fucking thing. And
you could thank probably UNESCO.
Of course, you could thank them for it, but that's the thing is
these different European bodies, I might add.
So these globalistic tendrils end up meaning that everybody ends up feeling the pressure.
Do you hear that? It was almost like a buzz or a hum.
It was the rattle of my passion in the back of my throat. No, it's so. This is where I'm saying. This is why I want to push back and say. You have to fix the problem at the root. And the problem is not just race. It is the problem with race is that there's traitors in these,
but it's not the Negro race.
But there's traitors. Well, right. But here's the thing: there's traitors in every nation. What makes a lot of African nations hellholes is the corruption and the leadership that makes it way worse than it could be under proper leadership.
But the beauty about the planet is the problems that the Africans have, that's their problem. And the problems that we have in our land, this is our problem.
Yeah, but that's not the way that the world works because it's all interconnected. That's the whole point of this video.
So it's the ones that are interconnecting all this thing. That's the problem.
You're sharing the burden of, Ugandans are experiencing the pressures from American mining companies just as they would in Nebraska or in West Virginia. It's this problem of shipping all of these things globally, and then the people are expected to suck up the difference, and that's the problem,
right?
But I think we'll just leave it there before
it was
we
good
dig ourselves in a.
I thought that we came around at looking like a couple angels after that attack upon.
I don't think people are going to see it that way, but fuck them. Anyways, later, guys.
Bye bye.